of Phil Crone. We've already called Chuck. Oh, that's what this is.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Phil Crone. I'm with the Dallas Builders Association, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the extraterritorial jurisdiction aspect of this. And obviously, it's an issue that impacts the builders and developers that are members of my association and the residents that they build for. And this is I'm going to explain a fact pattern and tell a story just to really illustrate that this manifests itself not just in Dallas, not just in Central Texas, but all across the state. And I'm going to tell you the story of Harry Bizios, who's a resident up in a small town of Lakewood Village, it's a little town in Denton County. And one of our members is building a home for him up there, and he's in the ETJ of Lakewood Village. Again, like I said, it's in Denton County. The home gets its water from the nearby town of Little Elm. The sewer comes from a septic system, and Denton County maintains all the roads in the subdivision. So in other words, Lakewood Village provides no services whatsoever to this home. So Harry got his approval from the subdivision's Architectural Review Committee. He got approval from FEMA because he was building close to a floodplain and he needed to construct a retaining wall. He got approval from Denton County for the building inspections that he had to do, and those building inspections were provided by a code-certified third-party entity. So despite Lakewood Village providing Harry with no services for his home, they still wanted to charge him an additional $1,200 for subcontractor registration fees. These were due prior to him getting a building permit. And then they wanted to charge him $14,646. $14,646 in permit, plan review, and inspection fees. And remember, he got the approvals from the county. He is building a very energy efficient home. He's doing everything that he needs to do outside of the town's jurisdiction. The town had a building inspector, but the building inspector actually moonlights in that position. He is employed by another municipality and would only take, on behalf of the town, would only take appointments after 5 p.m. on weekdays. And he had full-time employment elsewhere, and this was in addition to the third party that our member had already contracted with to get the code inspections done. So the town admitted that their cost to provide these services, if they had to provide them, was only $1,200. So in other words, the town stood to make a profit of more than $14,000 off of Harry's house for inspections that they're not legally authorized to impose, and for things that Harry was getting from other sources already. This fact pattern's happened before to other builders and developers in our area. I'm aware of 2 other cities that are enforcing their building standards in a similar manner in their ETJ in North Texas, and that's why I really appreciate the committee looking into this issue. I think most people don't have the means, especially folks that, largely country folks that live out in the ETJ, they don't have the means to get into expensive litigation. Harry didn't have a choice. He got sued by the town of Lakewood Village, and instead of paying the fees and backing down, he's going to stick with the litigation, which is now ongoing. However, you weigh this, and even the $15,000 that he's getting charged in this case is small in comparison to the $40,000 in legal fees that he's already incurred in this lawsuit. And sadly, many, from a developer's perspective, I'm talking a homeowner here in Harry's case, but from a developer's perspective, time is money, and litigation's expensive, and a lot of them will just pay the fee because they need to move on and get the project done, and it's just a cost of doing business. But I think the worst part of all this, not just the economics of it, is the fact that Harry is getting charged fees for services that aren't allowed by a government that he doesn't elect. He lives outside of the city limits. He doesn't vote for these people. He has no say in what's going on. And I think we're not just talking about dividing up chunks of land for future use in the city. We're talking about the property rights of residents like Harry and the rights of builders and developers like the members that I represent. There are cost of construction's increasing quite a bit. You talk about building standards and energy codes in and of themselves. In the last 3 years have cost the average builder an additional $7,500. When those codes get adopted by the city and then they get imposed out to the ETJ, that's an additional cost outside of the cost for inspections and everything else.
Excuse me. Under what authority is the city asserting its right to charge the $15,000?
They believe that since they passed an ordinance saying that their building standards apply in the ETJ, that because they did that, they are able to do so. And
is that what the state statute says?
No, they're relying, in my opinion, on state statutes that deal more with platting and subdivision powers. And you'll hear a little bit more later on from Ned Munoz with our state association that will explain what they rely on. But this law is vested in the platting powers, not the building standards and the aspects of what gets built on those.
But the plat was done. The platting power was exercised prior to him purchasing the land or prior to him starting the construction. If I understand what platting is, that's when you break the lots from into single family lots and put in the infrastructure and do lay out the lot and block numbers and all of that.
His subdivision came to be in 1995, and it wasn't for about 4 years afterwards when the subdivision came to be in the ETJ of Lakewood Village. So he was vested there, in my opinion, and not just on the building standards, which are more the legislation that's already on the books gives counties the ability to enforce building codes. He's in the county. He's building to the building codes that the county asks him to do. He has a vested rights argument, I believe, and certainly the platting authority, if the city had it, came afterwards.
Doesn't this have like a strong impact on your industry?
Yes, sir, it does. It, builders, I think everybody wants, they want clarity in what they're trying to do and what they're trying to build. We're not trying to skirt the rules, but they just want to know what code do they build to, who the inspector needs to be, and have fees that are commensurate with the cost of the service. And obviously that's not the case here when you have the cost of a service being $1,200, but the fees being in excess of $15,000.
It could quite possibly cause people not to build or to build farther out into the county, farther away from cities.
Yes, sir.
And if this were to become standard.
And unfortunately this is the lesser of two evils, because the litigation is much more expensive than the fees we're dealing with here. And that's why I came down from Dallas. That's why I really appreciate yourself and this committee looking into this issue, and I hope that more can be done when the session begins.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Phil, does Denton County and maybe the Dallas County in the area you represent, and I'll ask the gentleman who represents statewide, but when they talk about their building codes, is that a relatively standard level of code, or is there a vast spectrum of codes around the state when you talk about building codes?
Generally, the codes are going to be very similar because they come from an international code body that updates the base of the code every 3 years, and cities can make local amendments to them and change them a little bit, but essentially it's the same. And
so if everybody, and we'll just take Denton County, that's the sort of example we're talking about, just south of where I'm at, decides that hey, you know, there's going to be 1,000 homes built in this area in an ETJ or outside of an ETJ today that may be inside of an ETJ, you know, next annexation, is built at a code. There's not something that's glaring, standing out that says, geez, if they hadn't have built to Denton County code and they'd have built to this code, we would want to be able to annex them, but now we don't.
Yeah, there shouldn't be too much of a difference because I believe it was House Bill 2833 back in the 2009 session allowed counties to adopt the 2006 International Residential Code, and the inspection standards would either be that code or whatever code was in place by the county seat. So in this case, it would be the city of Denton. Builders have that option. In reality, there isn't a whole lot of difference. The issue comes in is when you have a city that wants to only impose its standard, and it may come with some of these really costly energy efficiency requirements that are starting to make their way across the state here in the last 3 years.
But nowhere in Denton County's code or any county codes that you know of do they violate what would be deemed as protecting for general health, safety, and welfare of the person residing in that home?
No, sir. I mean, this
because that's where we go back, Mr. Chairman. If we go back to the 1963 when ETJ law was put on the books, that's what it's supposed to be there for. And if the county codes are already covering that, but then the city wants to come in and put a different, on top of the fact that it sounds like the fees are outrageous. It sounds like we have something we need to look at strongly.
Yeah, Denton enacted 2833. They're very clear as far as their code requirements in the unincorporated areas. They rely on third parties to do those inspections, and in this case, what Lakewood Village is trying to do is excessive and duplicates what's already in place with the county.
And I'm assuming that the vast majority of these homes are not paid for with cash, but are financed, and you also have a bank that's overlooking the construction that says, do we want to be on the hook for this house and how it's built as well? And I know the bankers do interim inspections as well to make sure they're built to a standard
Absolutely.
That they would want to loan money against.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.